Hello, friends. Welcome to this history news, which is, of course, on Tuesday. Now, I did see that some of you mentioned that you did come down last night wondering if there was going to be a history news, and there wasn't. And that's because, for me, it was a bank holiday. Well, I'm on the wrong microphone. Just 1 second. Bear with. That should be better. It was a bank holiday, and I was driving back from Dover. So that is why there was no history news last night and instead is tonight, because I have been spending my August weekends being a medieval Brewster in Dover Castle, and it has been and is a delightful time. So if anybody has been to Dover Castle, you will know what a wonderful place it is. You may notice that I'm sat in front of a lovely photograph. This has been provided by our dear friend Steve. While we're doing our hellos, etc., try and guess where we are. If you are joining live, thank you very much. If you're watching on the playback, thank you as well. Let's say some hellos. First of all, I've got Pistol Annie. You're going to have finally got to sleep by then. Well, welcome. I hope you're not asleep right now. It's lovely to have you. I hope you're here. Hi, Lizzie, and hello to the chat as well. Soothing relaxation music, hello. Steve, you are celebrating your niece's birthday and you're going to listen in the car on the way home. Thank you for sending me the picture. Shane, hello. Yes, we're all in the house, which has been a new thing, because as I said, I've been away most weekends and Mr. Dr. Cat has been managing the 2 children, and they have certainly at times been giving him the runaround, but he is, of course, is a wonder and has done it in a way and in manners that I could probably never achieve. He's kept the ship afloat. Hello, Jessie. Thank you for joining. Hi, Sage. That's very kind of you to say, and calling me an ethical historian. I do certainly try. I do just want to caveat and say that I am at some point certainly going to have the wrong take, without a doubt. And I will adjust when I figure out I've had the wrong take, because we all come to things with biases. It's unavoidable. And at some point, I have no doubt that I will say something thoughtless, maybe, and almost certainly based in my own ignorance about a certain subject. And I may very well be challenged on it and then get sensitive and double down, because unfortunately, that is what human beings tend to do. I hope that if I say something stupid or insensitive or harmful, that I will have the sense when challenged to take a breath before reacting. I'm old enough that I should be able to do that, but I can't promise I always will. So if I do so, I will unreservedly apologise, but I can't promise it won't happen, because people make bad choices. They try their best, I think. Some don't. Some are, I can't swear. Insert expletive of choice. Jamie, hello. I'm so glad you could make it to a History News Live. Welcome, welcome. Leona, yes, you were 24 hours early. Well, thank you for making it back again. I appreciate it a lot. Chloe, hi, hello. Hello, Yentl. Thank you for joining. Kiwi Mamo's coming from New Zealand. Thank you very much. Pislani's in from Arkansas. Hello, hello. Laura, who is still convinced it's Monday today. Well, my son is so confused. He went, Mum, tomorrow when it's the weekend. I'm like, babe, you've had one weekday. You don't get a 1-day week. I said it was a shorter week. It's not a 1-day week. Right. Hello, friends. It's good to see you all. Hello. Medusa asks, is this a haunted building? Well, perhaps Steve can provide more information. I have not been. It may be haunted, if you believe in that sort of thing, of course. Brian. Yes, for those of you who missed, we had the wonderful Breeze Barrington on History After Dark, and she told us about Mary of Modena. And I'll be honest, it's a period of history that I mostly talk about as this. I reference the fact that we call it a bloodless revolution when obviously it's not. And I talk a lot about the kind of the violence that spills out in Scotland and Ireland. And talking to Breeze, the situation with James II's wife, Mary, and what she has to tolerate and put up with, it's incredibly hard not to be sympathetic to her. And I think we should extend grace to people in the same way. I'm not a fan of much of what King Henry VIII does, but it's very hard, I think, not to feel sympathetic to the little boy who loses his mother, who has also just lost his brother, whose elder sister is then sent off to Scotland. It's very hard not to feel sympathy for that boy. But I think ultimately, while I can certainly extend sympathy to Mary of Modena and maybe her husband and maybe her stepdaughters, at the end of the day, a lot of individuals who didn't have the good fortune to be born royal ended up spilling their blood because of this family squabble. And we see that play out time and time again. So I suppose that's where my sympathy kind of comes to an end at that point. And maybe that's unkind. Stuart's come to me with a question that I can't answer because my geography is not good enough to answer that. So no idea, because I'd have to know where both places were. And I don't. So I'd have to be able to visualize that. Steerpike's sister. You've asked, is that Bede's monastery? It is. It is. So it is. Now tell me if this. No, you can tell me if this is in Mercia. This is the monastery of St. Paul's in Jarrow. Now, do Jarrow and Mercia overlap? Oh, Steerpike's sister says you grew up down the road. Is it Mercia? Question mark. Because I have no idea. You've just used a word. And monk Wearmouth. Oh, it is Mercia. It is Mercia. Correct. So it is Mercia. And you're also, this is the site/buildings where the Venerable Bede lived and worked. And Steve told me that the building to the right of the tower is thought to be partially 7th to 8th century. So, Steve, for those guessing, yes, it's St. Paul's in Jarrow, south of the Tyne, in Northumberland. Very good. Fabulous. Thank you very much. What a great shot. And the Venerable Bede. Thank you very much, Steve. So, we have got today some updates, repatriation/decolonisation news. We've got our new news. We've got some ding-dongs, and we have got some events and exhibitions. As always, the articles listed and numbered in the description box, that correlates to the numbers you're going to see at the bottom of the screen. I've got lots of people to thank for sending me articles. I am very grateful. So without further ado, let's hop into saying those thanks. Thank you to Yvonne, to Beth, Jessie, Elverta, Shane, Joseph, Karolyn, Janet, Mackenzie, Daniella, Liliana, Emelia, Jackie, Alicia, Count Balerion and Kathy. Thank you very much for taking the time to send me over these news items. We have got a lot to cover, so let's hop straight in to the updates. Now, I can't for the life of me remember exactly when we discussed this heist of gold coins from the German Museum, but I know we have, and here we've got an update. 3 men were convicted for stealing 483 ancient Celtic gold coins from a museum in Manching in Germany. This happened in November 2022. So I'm assuming we would have talked about this in or around November or December 2022. The coins were originally found at an excavation in 1999, thought to date back to the 3rd century BCE and valued at around several million euros, we're told, although the material worth is only about 250,000 euros or $278,000. This is the heist where it was really organised. The thieves cut telephone and internet connections for the entire city so that the institution involved couldn't contact the authorities. So they knew what they were doing. They were only arrested last summer following a police search of 28 homes, businesses, vehicles, and a boathouse. One suspect was found in possession of a plastic bag filled with gold that matched the composition of the stolen coins, which of course indicated to people that some coins have been melted down. They think about 70 of the coins reportedly were lost. Then they did DNA testing and linked 3 of the 4 men to a string of robberies that happened across Germany and Austria and dated all the way back to 2014. So the charges are they were convicted of gang robbery, only one being acquitted of involvement in the Kelton Roman Museum heist, so the gold coin heist, but that person was convicted for other thefts associated with the group. The charges were not addressed during the 6-month-long trial, and the defendants' lawyers called for their acquittal. The court has sentenced the men individually to prison sentence ranging from 4 years and 9 months all the way up to 11 years. So there we go. They have been caught. Some coins have been lost, but presumably that also means that some coins have been or can be recovered, they think. Leona tells me that we spoke about this in December 2022. That makes lots of sense. The Weston family wants to buy Hudson's Bay Charter and donate it. The Royal Charter that formed Hudson's Bay about 355 years ago could apparently be getting a new home. The Canadian Museum of History announced that a private Canadian holding company for the Weston family wants to buy the document for $12.5 million. They then want to donate it to the institution that's located in Quebec. This was a charter signed by King Charles II in 1670. The museum says the acquisition still needs court approval, but if it's obtained, the Westons will donate the document immediately and permanently. This, they say, at a time when Canada is navigating profound changes and seeking renewed unity, it's more important than ever that we hold fast to the symbols and the stories that define us as a nation. The Royal Charter is an important artefact within Canada's complex history. Our goal is to ensure that it is preserved with care, shared with integrity, and made accessible to all Canadians, especially those whose histories are deeply intertwined with its legacy. So, this funding will help the museum share the charter with other museums and through public exhibitions. An interest was expressed by the Westons in the charter in May after the Bay filed for creditor protection in March, as they were 1.1 billion in debt. Leona points out that $12.5 million is the equivalent of 9.2-ish or 9.3 million pounds. Still a hefty chunk of change. So the Bay was under the weight of 1.1 billion in debt. The Bay was drawn to this offer because it substantially exceeded the value of the charter that was given during its appraisal. The Bay also liked the offer because of the additional funding to ensure Indigenous communities had and archival institutes had access to the charter. The Bay started allowing groups to view an inventory of the collection if they sign a non-disclosure agreement. Historians say they believe the charter is likely the most coveted piece in the retailer's collection. There is no doubt it's the most significant document that the Hudson's Bay Company has access to or they've ever produced. So for many years, the Bay kept the Royal Charter at its head office in Toronto, but Zalev said it was recently moved to, quote, a secure facility specifically equipped to store and protect important documents, art and artifacts. It was loaned to the Manitoba Museum in 2020, and the Museum and Archives of Manitoba do hold the bulk of the Bay's artifacts. They say, quote, we think of the charter as part of our records in a way already because we've got the rest of the story, so we feel like it made sense for the charter to be here and to be as publicly accessible as any of the other records. This is the keeper of Manitoba's Hudson Bay Company archives. Brian asks, have you ever heard of the Pemmican War between the Northwest Company and the Hudson's Bay Company? I must confess that no, I have not. Has anybody else? Sharon asks how the Westons got so much money. Absolutely no idea. If anybody does have any idea that's not slanderous, libelous rhinoceros, please feel free to pop it into the comments. Oh, apparently, MJ says they made their money in bread making. Now, if you are English, maybe British as a whole, bread is, of course, a synonym for money. So they made bread with bread. There we go. Lots of people have not heard of the Pemmican War. I have also not heard of the Pemmican War. Clue asks, is it some kind of food? Not a clue. Stuart calls it, says it's cider. Is that how they made their money? Or is the pemmican a cider? We shall have to investigate this Pemmican War some other time, I feel. So we will keep an eye on what's happening with this charter. There will perhaps be some updates in the near future. We do also have an update, a video update on the Grand Egyptian Museum. And Daniela's told me that her sister had some information. Her sister, who visited the Grand Egyptian Museum, has reported back that they do have lifts and escalators by way of accessibility. There are also apparently golf carts to get people from the outer perimeter of the site to the ticket office. There is confusion, and apparently some of the guides in Egypt were telling Daniela's sisters that the gem was not open, but the museum is open with the exclusion of the King Tut exhibit. So there we go. That's where we are on the update. But I will be honest that there is still reporting coming out that sounds more confused than that. So I think being on the ground, you're getting a far better idea, because it does seem like the press is deeply confused by what's happening here, and I'm not quite sure of why. Stuart points out that Weston's is a brand of cider. Yes, I have heard of that. I believe I used to serve it when I was in my misspent time as a barmaid. I was a very terrible barmaid. And Marianne points out bread and other groceries. Apparently the Westons own Selfridges, so they are not short of a bob or two. Yes, poor King Tut. Both for being left out, but also just in general. There's further updates on Pompeii. Archaeologists are still investigating. As we know, there's a bit of stuff being found at this site monthly. We are talking about the Pompeii archaeological site on a monthly basis, and new evidence does suggest, apparently, that people did return to live in the ruins of Pompeii following the volcanic eruption. They think that some survivors who could not afford to start a new life elsewhere returned to the site, and they may have been joined by others looking for a place to settle. Pompeii, we're told, was home to more than 20,000 people before the eruption in around AD 79. There was speculation that survivors had returned to the ruins, but thanks to new excavations, the picture is clearer. Post-79, Pompeii re-emerges, less as a city than a precarious and grey agglomeration, a kind of camp, a favela among the still recognisable ruins of Pompeii that once was. Evidence suggests that people live without the infrastructure and services of a typical Roman city, that the ruins provide an opportunity of finding valuable objects, so essentially scavenging. It's thought that people lived in the upper floors of homes above the ash below, with the lower floors converted into cellars. The city's destruction has, quote, monopolised the memory, Mr. Zutrigel says, who is in charge of the archaeological site, and said that in the rush to reach Pompeii's well-preserved artefacts, quote, faint traces of the site's reoccupation were literally removed and often swept away without any documentation. Now, of course, the site is a world-famous tourist attraction that offers a window into Roman life. Shane has given me far too much credit that I would make a good barmaid. I was an absolutely terrible barmaid. As I was an undiagnosed dyslexic, I have zero working memory and I'm very bad at numbers. So people rarely got, if they ordered a few drinks, they rarely got the correct list of drinks. And they also rarely got the right change first time. I genuinely think they kept me around because they knew I was just about crazy enough that if a fight broke out inside, I might vault the bar and try and deal with it. So I think that's probably why people kept me around, because I was willing to have a scrap. That's about it. That's about it. I was a better bouncer. I was a better bouncer than I was a barmaid by a long way. Much better bouncer. So we are now hopping into the repatriations news. First up, there is a bid to undo a colonial era wrong that touches people's old wounds. That's the headline. This is an article that was shared with me from the New York Times. We are told, for centuries, the indigenous Naga people of the Indian subcontinent have struggled to preserve their culture against external forces. Now they're trying to reclaim a part of that history, but the process has not been straightforward. They are looking to repatriate ancestral remains. And many of these have been in the British Museum for more than a century. And this has been, quote, a trigger for the Nagas. The society has changed immensely since those remains were taken. To contemplate their return means reckoning with those changes and with how many of them are the result of external forces and violence. I think this is a very interesting concept and discussion point, is that communities rightly asking for repatriation, that as well as, I think, it being the responsibility of the institutions that have been holding these items that are being requested for repatriation, as well as doing the work and having the discussion about repatriation, and also potentially talking about conservation and preservation and what's already been done and being transparent with what's been done to the item, there is perhaps also a duty of care and a need to assist and take one's own part in the changes that have happened between those items being stolen and being returned. And that is something, until I read this article, that I hadn't really thought about in much depth, that there is potentially going to be pain associated further pain associated for the community that's having the item repatriated, which of course is the opposite of what we hope the repatriation and reconciliation will achieve. However, that's not in any way me saying that the repatriation shouldn't happen, but I do think we all need to be mindful of that this is, in as much as it can be about healing an old wound, in so doing it can open up other old wounds or perhaps new wounds. And so, yes, this article is really interesting. So members of the Naga community in northeastern India have worked for 5 years with the Pitt Rivers Museum at the University of Oxford, whose collection of Naga cultural objects is the largest in the world, towards the goal of repatriating the hundreds of human remains in the collection. In June, a delegation of 20 Naga leaders, elders and scholars visited the museum and saw those objects for the first time. Quote, "I stood there beside them quietly, feeling a deep sorrow in my heart." The human remains in this collection, which number more than 200, include a warrior's cranium, a woman's skull decorated with buffalo horns, and a piece of skin with hair attached. The Naga tradition holds that human remains are sacred, carrying life and spirit. Quote, "They are restless. The spirits will not be at peace unless they find a resting place." We're told that for years these skulls were included in a Pitt Rivers exhibit titled, quote, "Treatment of Dead Enemies," under the label Headhunting Trophies, alongside remains from other indigenous groups, including well-known shrunken heads of the Shuar people of South America. This changed in 2020 when 120 of the human remains in the collection, including the shrunken heads and the Naga remains, were removed from display and put in storage. The museum's director said that these displays did not match with their values anymore. The repatriation discussions, we're told, are also touching on these wounds, and there are difficulties being raised because of this. One of which is, where should these objects go? Because today, most Nagas live in the India state of Nagaland, but Naga communities can also be found in the states of Assam, Manipur, and Arunachal Pradesh and Myanmar. Before borders were drawn up by British colonial forces, this group of people lived in a contiguous region loosely known as the Naga Hills that's now divided among those modern states. There was a demand for independence in 1928 because the Naga people did not want to be part of the British Raj or India. We are told, quote, "The Nagas shared no cultural similarities with India." But when Britain left the subcontinent in 1947, they were brought under the control of the Indian state. And so struggle, armed resistance followed. And this was broadly known as the Naga National Movement. India saw it as a threat and suppressed it as insurgency. So there's a lot of pain and suffering that's connected with the theft of these people's remains, but also the aftermath of that colonial life. So there are art workshops being held, one of which is called Deconstructing Morang. Long ago, morangs were youth dormitories where Nagas came together to socialize. This was one of the traditions that were lost to both Christianization and also to time. The individual running it, Throkimba Imchugru, said he wanted to adapt the concept to the present. He said, quote, "Morangs can be anywhere, in a school, an office, within a big city. They needn't be within an architectural structure." In the discussions with the Pitt Rivers Museum, the Naga community has also been a part of an attempt to reconcile with the past. The return of the remains in the museum's collection could take decades. The fastest repatriation the museum has ever carried out took 1.5 years, while the longest, which was the repatriation of Tasmanian remains, took 45. The delegation that went to the museum opened its June visit with an Indigenous chant that alludes to the original parting of the Naga ancestors from their creator. The chant concludes with the hope that the ancestor will be reunited with the creator and help to heal the wounds of the past. Quote, I don't know if this process of repatriation will do the healing for us, but I do know there's a lot of trauma and we need the healing. So we have a little look at the conversation. Leona, suggestion here that repatriation should be more sensitive to the history and the way the place feels about the true history of it. Yes, I mean, the thing is, of course, that's the issue, isn't it? That these communities, they aren't held in stasis. That's the thing, isn't it? These objects that were stolen from them have been, certainly a lot of stuff has been put on them by the people that stole them. But in terms of their connection to the story of that community, they're in almost a weird sort of stasis that, because of their theft, there's almost like a pause button hit. And then the country goes through the things the country goes for, particularly a country and nations that have dealt with invasion and colonization, have obviously got a lot to unpack, in addition to the theft of their cultural objects, in addition to their forced Christianization or whatever it may be. So the repatriation of the objects is almost taking something out of stasis. It's pressing the play button on the items, and the community has to find a way to make one catch up with the other. So yet again, we are asking for more work to be done from the people who've been stolen from, arguably. But that isn't. I don't think that's necessarily what. That's the fault of the Pit Rivers. I'm not saying that. I think this is going to be the case of what happened in almost all cases of repatriation. This is another thing that needs to be thought about and discussed, is the emotional cost of it. A lot of people talking about the title, Scarlet Ooh at the title. It is a weird title. A bid to undo a colonial era wrong touches people's old wounds. I mean, maybe there's probably a better way of saying that doesn't make it sound like repatriation is a bad idea that causes harm. Clue. Yeah, when it comes to repatriation and also ethical handling, the Pit Rivers is doing incredible stuff. And also this article talking about how it might take years. That is not the Pit Rivers. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that's the Pit Rivers dragging their feet. I believe it's the complexity of things like when you have the after effects of the British partition of India and a community being fragmented forcibly in this way. Items can't be split 4 ways. That can't necessarily happen. So I think that what's going to take the time is figuring out how to unpick the Gordian knot left behind by colonial endeavours, that's the way we'd say it, and then also colonial abandonment. Yeah, Steve, the return of artifacts to their point of origin is a worthy aim, but there are consequences when modern borders clash with ancestral grounds, and now you have these issues with the case. And that's the other question is, what actually is the point of origin for an artifact? Is the point of origin for an artifact the physical land from which it was stolen? Maybe. But when the community that has if there is a surviving community with tradition that produced that artifact that were then forcibly also displaced, is the point of origin the makers or the land they made upon? And again, these are not questions that I know the answer for. Not at all. Just having a look through the chat. So I just, yeah. So I think this is just, I wanted to bring this up because I think it's something we talk about a lot, is making sure that we aren't going to be burdening a community with the cost of caring for something when they have not been allowed or permitted to grow the infrastructure that would make that easy, that we have a responsibility to support them in the construction of that infrastructure, etc. Like, there's a lot of the logistical things that we've talked about, but something that I certainly hadn't considered till I read this article, which I do agree has a dodgy headline, was the trauma that needs to also be unpacked with the return of the items. And that is in no way to say that they should not be returned, but the question about what that means, I think, needs to be considered. On the note of further repatriations, we have somebody who had a marble fragment from the Acropolis in their home. A marble fragment was in the living room of this gentleman's home in Chile. It was about 8.2 by 11.4 centimeters. His father was a member of the Italian Navy. He traveled in the Mediterranean, and then in the 1930s, he visited Athens. He went to the Acropolis and took a piece with him as a souvenir. He told him, this man, that it was from the Parthenon. During the Second World War, his father served as chief engineer on an Italian submarine, and then when they were south of Crete, they came under British fire and they were sunk. There had been no naval battle beforehand, but the British managed to intercept the submarine signal and track its course. His father was among those who were rescued, later taken prisoner, and sent by the British to India. After the war, he was repatriated, and in 1947, his first son, Enrico Tosti Croce, was born. He feared that another war might break out, so he took his family and moved them to Chile in 1950. In 1994, his father died, and within his belongings was this ancient marble fragment. So he decided in early 2025 that the artifact should be returned where it belongs. He read an article about Greece's request for the return of the Parthenon sculptures, and so he contacted the Greek embassy in Chile by email and expressed his intention. He then travelled 850 kilometres, which I feel like that's far. I work in miles. If someone can tell me what 850 kilometres is in miles, I will be grateful. He travelled 850 kilometres from Santiago and handed over the marble fragment in person. He said, quote, "It would not be fair to keep it in my home. I did it because it was the right thing to do." He is now 78 years old, and he is thank you. Steve said it's about 550 miles. So here we have somebody who, now 78 years old, has taken this object himself. He travelled, I assume drove, I hope he didn't walk, all this way to do it himself. It's the archaeological version of, if they wanted to, they would. He wanted to, and he did. He said, for me, it was a simple gesture, but for Greece, I understand it was something important. Perhaps it will inspire others, British Museum, to do something similar. Apparently, it does not come from the Parthenon, but is attributed to an archaic temple built on the Acropolis hills. It's likely to be from what ancient sources refer to as the Hecatompedon, a Doric peripetal, oh wow, words are hard, peripteral temple, a forerunner of the Parthenon, which was erected, they think, around 550 to 570 BCE. So by my understanding, it's older than the Parthenon. A Chilean lawyer and expert in international law, Paz Zarate, says that her compatriot's decision to voluntarily return the object to ancient Greece is a significant act. The Chilean holder of the fragment could have approached a private antiquities collector or perhaps a museum to sell the object, but he did not, and instead took the right course of action. This coming November, on the occasion of a tribute concert for the late composer Mikis Theodorakis, the Greek embassy in Santiago, Chile, plans to honour Toste Croce, the donator, for the return of the small marble fragment. Quote, I was surprised when I found out, he said. I do not think I deserve such a big thank you. It was a simple gesture from the depths of my heart. Hamster Nerd, good news, gong. Yeah, do you know what? We've got a ding-dong section. Maybe we should do people doing good news things. Further repatriation. We have investigators searching for a Native American stolen items that were stolen from decades ago in New Mexico. So this is not repatriation that's happened, but fingers crossed, one that will. Decades-old case file describes a medium-sized bowl crafted at Santa Ana Pueblo more than a century ago, handed down through generations. It's a pottery piece adorned with dark red triangles used for making bread. It's among nearly 150 antiquities stolen from the Native American community's ceremonial village during a series of burglaries that started in the summer of 1984. War shields, traditional clothing, moccasins, willow baskets, and woven rugs were taken, all items that would fetch favourable sums given their rarity. Federal authorities and tribal police in New Mexico eventually busted the thieves. Pleas were entered, punishment was doled out, and the case was closed. Inexplicably, authorities never pursued the recovery of the stolen items. That's weird. Why? Now, the Pueblo's historic preservation and repatriation experts are partnering with a tribal conservation officer who once served as the top cop for the Federal the Federal Bureau, apparently that's a word I can't say, of Land Management. And they're going to crack this cold case one irreplaceable item at a time. So they are on the hunt. But of course, some of this is the better part of 40 years old. The first burglary happened in August 1984, so literally 40 years ago. This was a week after the Pueblo northwest of Albuquerque celebrated a feast day, which was it's apparently a rare occasion when outsiders are welcomed inside to watch traditional dances and share food. And seemingly, it gave somebody the chance to case the gaff and start stealing things. The case files and court records, the thieves then went stealthily through the desert scrub and sandy washes to the Secreta Pueblo, and over 10 months they targeted the homes and traditional society houses in the village, and that they have now been added to the national list of historic places a decade earlier. They were stealing blankets, filling them up with pots, everything they could carry. And then as they fled, they dropped some items on the road. So a rancher found other artifacts that had been stashed in the desert to be recovered later. It was all ended through a nighttime sting in 1985. So this is only a year in the making. And identified in it was an Albuquerque antiquities dealer. They were identified as the ringleader, and some hired hands as members of Laguna Pueblo, another Native American community west of Albuquerque. Investigators found that other New Mexico pueblos were also targeted. The issue is that the stolen items are directly related to traditional activities, meaning they qualify as sacred objects. And there are some that are more than a century old, which could qualify as antiquities protected under the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. These are items, we're told, that were part of another culture's religion, lifeways, ways of being, things that hold close our identity and that are part of our story and our relationships with one another. At Santa Ana, the mission is simple: to try and find as many of these and bring them home. They are reviewing ledgers kept by Larry Frank, an author and Native American art expert in northern New Mexico. The team discovered the shield had been listed for sale at a gallery in New York City. The gallery posted a picture of the shield in 2021, saying it was from Jemez Pueblo, not Santa Ana, and noting the shield had been acquired by a Canadian collector. Donald Ellis, the gallery's owner, told the Associated Press via email that Frank had the shield for more than 2 decades, and there were no claims concerns regarding its provenance when the gallery acquired it in 2005. He said it was acquired in good faith from a credible and reputable source. Ellis said he didn't fact-check the Instagram post about the shield being sold to a Canadian collector, and he has no information on its current whereabouts. Jarrett Lujan, a cultural resources coordinator with the Pueblo, said that his grandfathers taught him about passing along traditions to the coming generations. That means he must bring back the stolen pieces of Tamaya culture for his daughter and others. Quote, "That's all we're looking for," he said, "to empower them and encourage them to keep the culture alive." So, on the off chance that somebody has seen, for example, this bowl, if you can, take a picture of it, geotag it, and send it to the relevant authorities. Seeing some banter about Scottish accents. They are the accent that I find really interesting. I don't think it's still heard much in Scotland anymore, but it's the Morningside accent in Edinburgh, which correct me if I'm wrong, is I have been told that it was a constructed accent, and it is, broadly speaking, the Mrs. Doubtfire accent. Mrs. Doubtfire speaks in a over the top, sure, but it's a Morningside accent. I won't do any more than that. Now then, we're staying in we're going from New Mexico to Mexico. The FBI nope, that's not what's happened. They haven't stolen anything. Incorrect. The FBI is returning. That makes more sense. Stolen conquistador document to Mexico. And we can see it here. The FBI has returned a 500-year stolen document signed by a Spanish conquistador, Hernan Cortez, in Mexico. The manuscript page was penned in 1527. Is one of 15 pages thought to have been stolen from Mexico's National Archives between 1985 and 1993. This is the US Investigatory Agency saying this. This is a page that describes payments made for supplies for expeditions were discovered in the US and then repatriated on Wednesday, the Wednesday before this article was written. Cortez was an explorer who brought about the end of the Aztec Empire and paved the way for the colonization of the Americas by the Spanish. The manuscript details the plans for his journey across what would become New Spain. Mexico's National Archives encountered the document among a collection of papers signed by Cortez, but they found that 15 pages were missing when they went to put it on microfilm in 1993. This recovered page bore a number that was written in wax that archivists had applied in 1985 to 86, suggesting that it had been stolen somewhere between the two cataloguing periods. The agency has not disclosed exactly where the which manuscript page was found or who held it while it was seized. There's going to be no prosecution over the theft because apparently this page has changed hands several times. The document, quote, really gives a lot of flavour as to the planning and preparation for uncharted territory back then. The payment of pesos of common gold for expenses in preparation for discovery of the Spice Lands. The so-called, quote, Spice Lands were areas of Eastern and Southern Asia. Europeans sought to find a quicker trade route with those areas by sailing west, but in so doing, they hit the Americas instead. This document repatriation, as we know, comes at a time of political tension between Mexico and the US over tariffs and also lots of other issues, let's be clear. But the FBI says, as one of the largest consumers of antiquities, the US has a responsibility to counter the trafficking of artifacts. Quote, pieces like this are considered protected cultural property and represent valuable moments in Mexico's history. So this is something that Mexicans have in their archives for the purpose of understanding history better. The FBI says it's determined to locate and repatriate the other pages that are still missing from the collection. Another document signed by Cortez was returned to Mexico by the FBI back in 2023. Ooh, Manda, that is a conspiracy speculation that's just wet my whistle. I'm convinced most of these returns happen due to insurance companies saying no to covering artifacts, or at least maybe getting a little bit more suspect or sniffing around and wanting provenance for artifacts that they are going to cover. Because I wonder if an insurance company is covering an item that has been bought in good faith that's then seized, do the insurance company, depending on the policy, I suppose, potentially have to make the person from whom the artifact was seized from, do they have to make them financially whole? Interesting. I don't know about that. Hampstead points out, or maybe it's just to avoid jail term. Yep, could well do. Could well do. Amanda thinks it depends on the policy. I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the big insurance companies have started going, okay, yeah, happy to insure that, but I am going to need you to give me provenance so that because obviously they're watching what's happening in the world. So that's very interesting. Yeah, it is going to depend on where you are, for sure. For sure. And I think also contracts and they in the States, they might differ from state to state, mightn't they? Very interesting. Well, Leona, presumably the paperwork they would need to make a claim is that they would need to prove they bought it in good faith. And if there has not been criminal charges brought against them, that is essentially potentially the government saying that they bought it in good faith. So if you buy it in good faith and the insurance company has insured it as yours and you hold the policy, could you be reimbursed for it? Huh? So you've corrected that to US. Head and body part sales are still legal in the US. I'm very, what? Are they? So there's a trade in like anatomists. Okay. Okay. I was unaware of that. I was unaware of that. That feels wild to me. I'm going to be honest. That feels wild to me. Oh, do you know what? You're talking about selling on social media. I have seen there's some kid who is selling human skeletal remains. He has like a wall of spines. And he's on the other one that begins with T. Yes. And he sells bits of people. It's that, yeah, I've seen that. It's feral. Wildly inappropriate, in my opinion. So we're at the end of the repatriation. Now we are going to hop into new news. A new species of dinosaur has been discovered on a small English island. The small English island, the Isle of Wight, is the one, which is, yes, they have festivals on it and things. This is just off of our southern coast. This has got a name that I am going to struggle with. It's chewy. Islithorachis macarthurae. That first one it's chewy. So this dinosaur is thought to have roamed the Isle of Wight about 120 million years ago. I doubt it's called the Isle of Wight then, but there we go. It's named in honour of our British sailor Ellen MacArthur due to the sail-like shape of its back. They think that this would have been used to attract partners for the dinosaur. The fossil was found in 1985, and it was initially thought to be one of two plant-eating dinosaur species already known from the Isle of Wight. However, during an examination of the bones during his PhD studies, retired Dr. Jeremy Lockwood realised, quote, this one had particularly long neural spines, which is very unusual. It's a sail-like feature that defined the new dinosaur as a new species. It stood about as tall as a giraffe's shoulder, so 2 meters, and weighed as much as a small car, namely 1,000 kilograms. Brian, is the Isle of Wight thought of as posh? I think bits of it. Yeah. I think the Isle of Wight Festival is pretty nice. I mean, you're still in a tent, but some people enjoy that, don't they? And Isle of Wight is the one that Victorian. You brought it up. Jessie's brought it up, and Jules has agreed. I'm trying to remember desperately. It was Victoria and Albert's favoured holiday home was on the Isle of Wight, and I cannot for the life of me remember it. All I want to say is Sandbanks, but that's not. That's on the English coast. Osborne House. Thank you very much. Could not, for the life of me, remember that. Yes, everyone's now shouting Osborne House in the comments. Yeah, so nice enough that Queen Victoria was there. But as with all places, I'm sure it has its more salubrious and less salubrious locations. And I must confess, I've never been to the Isle of Wight, so I couldn't tell you. But I've heard very lovely things. Yeah, Sandbanks is in Bournemouth, Steve, and Sandbanks is very posh, and houses go for many, many Williams. No, that's not how my words work. Oh, the Muttley Wheeze came out. Many, many millions. There we go. That's who. Right. On that note, we've got this. This is cool. A 4,000-year-old Egyptian handprint has been found on an ancient Egyptian tomb offering. It's thought the handprint is thought to. I'm just checking the chat. Yes, I do laugh like Muttley. Right. The handprint is thought to date to 2055 or between 2055 and 1650 BCE. It's been described as a rare and exciting discovery, and it's been pressed into what is being referred to as a, quote, soul house, a clay model resembling a building that can be traced to burials in ancient Egypt. This is according to the British Museum. A senior Egyptologist at the Fitzwilliam Museum, Helen Strudwick, has said that the unusually detailed handprint was left by whoever constructed the ceramic piece, so before the clay dried. They found fingerprints left in wet varnish on a coffin and decoration, but it's rare and exciting to find a complete handprint underneath the soul house. They've never seen such a complete handprint on an Egyptian object before. The soul house is going to be displayed in the Fitzwilliam Museum from the 3rd of October as part of an exhibit that they have titled Made in Ancient Egypt. It's going to spotlight relics of ancient Egypt, focusing on different forms of art, the people who made them, and the techniques they used to do so. So when that is announced, I will share it in the events and exhibitions as well. A 3-year-old, again, the child archaeologists are at hand. A 3-year-old girl on a family walk found out a pebble that actually turned out to be a 3,800-year-old amulet. It's a Canaanite scarab amulet dating to the Middle Bronze Age that was camouflaged on the ground of a path. And this is set to go on display in a special exhibition. The special exhibition, it's going on a public display at the J. and Jeannie Schottenstein National Campus for the Archaeology of Israel in honor of Passover. And we're told that many of the items will be shown there for the first time, including seals of pharaohs, Egyptian statues, ritual vessels, and now this scarab amulet discovered by an enthralled 3-year-old. How cool is that? And look at it. It's beautiful. The carving is so cool. It's really cool. What a thing to have found. We do like a child archaeologist. It was bright and shiny. The 3-year-old might have licked. Look, if it was my 4-year-old, that would have been in a pocket. I mean, he's quite good at not licking things he's found on the ground now, but he pockets everything. The current running battle is when I take something out of my washing machine, if I find a pebble in a pocket, I'm like, what is this doing? He keeps putting stones in my washing machine. Lena points out they are in fact close to the ground, but then to be fair, so am I. And I've not found anything. Medusa's disclosing that everything they know about England they learned from Midsummer Murders. Fair. I mean, you do want to be careful in a small provincial village. They are dangerous places. They are the Badlands, in fact. They are the Badlands. Amanda's campaigning for me to make some merch about licking the artifacts, and also for me to get Gabriel a rock carrying bag. If you could see the area by my front door, it looks like Stig of the Dump has moved in, because that child cannot leave a stick alone. It's like having a golden retriever. I have got sticks of all sizes by my front door. I'm not going to encourage him to start bringing home half a rock garden as well. I'm not going to do it. He needs a mesh detector. Do you know what? This is what somebody gets for Historian's Kid. This is the equivalent of getting a kid a drum set. Because it requires so much effort to do. Steve, I'm going to show Gabriel the Lego, and he is going to love it. Steve sent me a picture of a Lego model of the interior of a cathedral, and it's amazing. I do know that he will love it. I have got two concerns. One, if I hand him my photo computer to show him the picture, I'm not getting it back for the next hour and a half. Two, if I show him that, he will believe he's getting that Lego kit for Christmas. And I have not got the emotional willpower to build that on Boxing Day. I haven't got it in me. I have not got that in me. Nope. I wish I was the kind of parent that went, that feels like a great thing to do on Boxing Day. But what feels like a great thing to do on Boxing Day is eat my own body weight in Christmas chocolate and have a sleep. This is wild. Centuries old Hawaiian petroglyphs. Oh, Steve's just told me that the model of that won't fit in most people's houses. That will not stop him from wanting it. And that child has got a mind like a steel trap. Because if he sees something that he wants, he will keep asking about it. All beyond Christmas, he will be like, well, if it didn't come for Christmas, can it come for my birthday? I will never escape. We'll never escape it. I'll have to show it to him and tell him that a wizard made it. We can't possibly, a wizard made it. Because I would love to show him, but I also cannot have him asking for me to buy it for him. Leona says, buy him a complicated Lego kit before I go away and let Mr. Dr. Cat do it. I'm telling that man has been through enough. Also, he loves Lego. He does love Lego. And I can see what my Boxing Days will look like, because he will definitely build it. But also, we have enough Lego at home that I've stepped on it unawares in my bare feet. And I am already on the I hate Lego bandwagon, because they are like aggressive, stabby landmines. And I'm just not for it. I'm just not for it. Kiwi, I want the teacher to deliver to me a collection of rocks. My son had a collection on a school day trip. He was about 6 at the time. That teacher carried them. They had enough. They had enough of that. Oh, fun times. Okay, so here we've got Hawaiian petroglyphs emerging from the sand the first time in 9 years. They were discovered in 2016. And they, as you can see, depict human-like figures, and they extend more than 100 feet. Human stick figures are in the ground on Oahu's western shore. Most of the time, they are hidden beneath a blanket of sand and sediment. But recently, the Pacific Ocean has cleared the sand away, and the petroglyph are visible once again. Experts say it's difficult to determine exactly when the petroglyphs were carved, but they think they're at least 500 years old. The entire panel measures roughly 115 feet long, with some of the figures being more than 8 feet tall and nearly 8 feet wide. They have recorded 26 petroglyphs, including 18 human-like stick figures. Of those, 8 appear to be male. 2 of the figures apparently have fingers, which is apparently unusual. The ones with fingers are, for me, pretty unique. This is Alton Ixabe, who is an archaeologist of the US Army. They continue, quote, I believe there are somewhere else with fingers, but fingers and hands are pretty distinct, as well as the size of them. It's really interesting. There is a suggestion that these figures might have something to do with agriculture. In 2016, the panel was exposed after a series of late spring and early summer storms, which produced powerful waves that washed away the sand. It's thought that the petroglyphs were likely exposed by seasonal changes to the beach caused by low-pressure weather systems coming in from the eastern Pacific. This is a natural process that uncovers and eventually recovers these glyphs and others located around the island. Members of the public are allowed to walk on the beach to see the petroglyphs, but they do need to show a military ID if they want to park at the Army Recreation Centre, apparently. Quote, how much attention do you want to bring to this area? You really don't want people going digging for them when they're not exposed. But they're certainly awesome to come and see on the public beachscape. Yes, when these cover back up, let's tell everybody to leave them covered up, because they will appear when it's time for them to appear. I wonder, and I want to be very clear that I know absolutely nothing about petroglyphs apart from what the word means, but I wonder about the fact that there is a sense that these connect to agriculture, and they were first exposed during a low pressure system. I wonder if these were marked because when the sea does certain things, it also does things to land and agriculture, and the people who made this essentially created an advanced warning system that they had to change whatever they were doing. Maybe, right? We have a newly deciphered cuneiform tablet that contains an unknown Sumerian myth. And you can see here a copy of the cuneiform tablet. This was rediscovered due to a University of Chicago Sumerologist, Jana Matuskik, deciphering a forgotten cuneiform tablet that is residing currently in the collection of the Istanbul Archaeological Museums. This is a 4,400-year-old inscribed clay object. It was given little scholarly attention because of its fragmentary nature. The tablet is mentioned in a publication by esteemed Assyriologist Samuel Noah Kramer in the 1950s, but it was not fully studied until the recent research. The text conveys a tale of how a Sumerian god, storm god, Ishkur, trapped in the netherworld, causing chaos on Earth due to lack of rain. Ishkur's father, Enlil, the king of the gods, summons a divine assembly and asks one of the gathered deities to retrieve his son. No gods volunteer, but surprisingly, a lone fox does. The fox enters slyly, maneuvers through the underworld on its journey. But in the broken tablet, there ends the narrative, so we don't know what's going on. Until other more complete tablets are found that record the same myth, scholars may never know whether the fox successfully completes its mission. But there is, of course, a scholarly article that you can check out that's linked on the link, the article link in the description box. Brian, I don't. I'll be honest with you. I'm never going to be able to read cuneiform, so there's little chance of me reciting anything that opens a hellmouth. But they are. So, from what I've seen, they are regenerating Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So at least we will have protection when the Hellmouth does open. Oh yeah, sorry, Steve. To be specific, the model that he is talking about, it's a model of Durham Cathedral, and the photograph Steve has sent me, you can see that there has been a lot of detailed work to the interior as well. This thing has got bells and whistles. The church version of those. This article is essentially a photo book, if you will. This is archaeologists and divers recovering ancient artifacts from the seabed. They are working together to retrieve statues, Roman coins, and other relics from the Mediterranean seabed in Alexandria, Egypt. They found a headless statue, a sphinx, and unknown priest figure. So if you want to see, these are just a selection of the photographs. If you want to see more of them, then do check out the article. It looks like they found loads of really cool stuff, as these pictures show. A Bronze Age sickle has been unearthed in the Lower Seine Valley. Archaeologists from the National Institute for Preventive Archaeological Research announced the discovery of a Bronze Age sickle in France's Lower Seine Valley. According to experts, the sickle likely has origins in the British Isles dating to around 12,000 to 600 BCE. So that's during the late Bronze Age. Made of copper alloy in near complete condition, the sickle has marks along the curved edge consistent with repeated cutting. Its socket includes a side ring and two holes where a wooden handle was once fixed with pegs made from bone. And there's been microscopic analysis that reveals trace of the original handle preserved inside the socket, which seemed to have been made from either willow, poplar, black alder, hornbeam, or hazel. Compared to other sickles found throughout Europe, archaeologists have traced the origins of the sickles to the British Isles, suggesting long-distance trade and cultural connections between populations in Britain and France during the late Bronze Age. During this period, trade in bronze metalworking along the Atlantic seaboard expanded dramatically. From around 1200 BCE, the archaeological evidence reveals a significant shift. Metalwork began circulating in far greater quantities with much greater regularity, and this marks the emergence of a fledgling mercantile trade, replacing the earlier, more exclusive exchange system. Quote, originating from the British Isles, this type of socketed sickle is rare in France. Only around 10 examples have been recorded, concentrated on the Channel coast, the valleys of the Somme and the Seine, and the Atlantic coast. So there we go. Conversation, communication, and trade is going on. Now, this article, if you click upon it, does have human remains. I have chopped those out, and that's what we're seeing here. 2,000-year-old arm tattoos on a mummified woman reveal insights about the tattooing technique in ancient Siberia. So we can see, for example, this is the sketch of the tattoo that's found on a female mummy. It appears to feature animals, so a tiger, deer, and a leopard is what's going on here. And they all seem to, the deer is being attacked by a tiger, it looks like. So they've used cutting-edge photography to discover that a previously unknown tool has been used to hand poke these designs in multiple stages. The ice mummies the community of ice mummies that these tattoos are found on are known for their preserved body decorations that depict animal fight scenes and mythical creatures, including an animal representing a griffin. The nomadic Pazyryk culture was one of the ancient Scythian world. It was an Iron Age. They flourished in the Iron Age, and they buried their dead in huge mounds called kurgans, which were dug into the Siberian permafrost. This form of burial, combined with embalming techniques, rudimentary ones at that, preserved the bodies of several nobles. Now, with near-infrared digital photography with sub-millimeter resolution, it's allowed archaeologists to look more closely than ever at tattoos on one woman who is thought to have died at 50 years old, and she is tattooed on her hands and forearms. These tattoos are shown to be made up of lines of uniform thickness. Some created using a multi-point tool, others made with a finer single-point tool. There are visible overlapping lines that reveal where the tattooist stopped working and then picked up again. There is no solid evidence of tattooing implements that's been found, likely because the implements were made of something that was biodegradable. The woman's right forearm tattoo, which is the animal fighting scene, had much greater detail than her other tattoos, suggesting they were made by a more skillful and experienced tattoo artist. It's thought it took 1 or 2 sessions, or perhaps even more, as well as different tool arrangements to complete this tattoo. It's unclear if these tattoos were made by multiple artists at different levels of expertise or by one artist over time, whether the tattooer was part of a permanent workshop or on the move, perhaps as a seasonal part of burial rites. They just don't know when this is happening. So these mummies have not given up all of their secrets. More research is going to be done. Quote, "It's possible that cutting through the tattoos during the embalming held some ritual significance. This is something we may not be able to better investigate. We may be able to better investigate in the future using high-resolution imagery of other preserved tattoos from the region." We have this, I thought was really interesting. Ancient Romans, they suggest, may have loved fossils as much as we do, even if they didn't understand what they were. A trilobite fossil that might be hundreds of millions of years old has been found in a 2,000-year-old, what looks to be an amulet. About 100 years after the death of the Roman Emperor Augustus, the historian Suetonius noted the leader's fascination with fossils. He apparently displayed prehistoric items in his Capri villa, claiming they came from, quote, ancient giants and monsters. New research suggests that, absent of modern science knowledge, ancient Romans, from the emperor down, held special meaning for fossils. That finding came from an archaeological discovery at a 1st to 3rd century CE Roman settlement in the northwestern Spain. Jessie says a trilobite fossil dating to more than 400 million years old. The fossil itself bears 7 artificial marks on its back, indicating to archaeologists it was likely used as a pendant or a bracelet with amulet-style significance. The fossil is thought to have travelled more than 250 miles from southern Spain to its final destination. So clearly, they think, seen as a special enough item to merit being travelled along this trade route. What's been fossilised here is a marine creature, an extinct marine creature that first came into being around 521 million years ago. And then about 250 million years ago, they would be extinct, like 90% of all species on Earth at that time, during the mass extinction event known as the Great Dying. Finally, this fossil was altered in a manner that suggests fossils worn on the body represents a great discovery. If this had appeared as something that was unmodified, it would have had significant value. But because it's been transformed and set into jewellery, it actually gives it a much greater scientific level of interest, because it presents it as something they would have viewed as being an, in quotes, magical stone, set in metal or leather as a small piece of jewellery. It was discovered in what amounted to an ancient waste pile, though, in an area of settlement that might have been used to keep livestock. So does that point to the fact that over time it lost its value? Not far from where the trilobite was found, archaeologists discovered an inscription reading Maximus. To academics, this lends credence to the idea that the fossil may have been used during a votive offering in the family's household on their shrine, a small token from the past to ensure the protection for their future. As Steve points out, dinosaur bones may be the origin of dragon myths. Yes, certainly they may be. We aren't the first communities to have found dinosaur bones. We just are among the first to have defined them as such. An archaeology student in England unearthed the gold artifact from the Middle Ages on her very first dig. Now, this is beginner's luck in article form, and good luck to her. This is Newcastle University student Yara Souza digging near the remains of Deer Street, a motor Roman road that once ran through Northumberland. So a similar object to what she found was found in the area by a metal detectorist a few years ago, and that is thought to have been a pin. But the exact nature of what she has found is still a mystery. It's as you can see in the photograph where she's holding it in her hand, it's a very detailed and worked bauble-y thing on a stem. So it's some kind of a topper to something. The chance to participate in the dig was something that Yara had been waiting for a while. She was from Orlando, Florida originally, and she was supposed to come to Hadrian's Wall last year, but couldn't make it because she was unwell. She said, quote, "I couldn't believe I found something so quickly into my first ever excavation. It was actually quite overwhelming. After I'd had to miss Birdswold last year, it was amazing to discover something that hasn't been seen for more than 1,000 years. I was really geeking out over it, of course. It's apparently about 4 centimeters long and has a decorative swirl pattern. It has a handle or finial at one end and a bulb on the other, and it's thought to date back about 1,100 years. It's made of gold, so it's a high-status object, and they think it might have had a religious or ceremonial purpose, so ritual purposes is going on here. The object that was found in 2021 was a bit smaller than the find and was found to be a ball-headed pin from somewhere between 800 to 100 CE. Both were found along the ruins of Deer Street. It's referred to as an exciting find of exceptional quality, and they are delighted that Yara has made this discovery at the beginning of her career as an archaeologist. I think what this is, it's the decorative top of a hairpin or a hair stick. Or maybe it's part of a decorative part of a brooch. I think whatever this is, it has some kind of pin on it. It's either going through the hair, or it's going through like a brooch. But Manda, I saw that and went, that's top of a hairpin, a hair stick. That's what I thought when I saw it. But perhaps we shall see. We also have a Viking silver hoard that has revealed far-reaching links in trade between England and the Islamic world. This hoard was found in North Yorkshire in a dig led by Dr. Jane Kershaw, who's the Associate Professor of Viking Archaeology at the School of Archaeology. And this sheds light on the scope of Viking wealth. They used geochemical analysis to trace the origins of the silver ingots and jewellery items from the Bedale hoard, which was found in 2012. And this showed that while the bulk of the silver derived from Western European sources, a substantial portion originated from Islamic silver coinage, or dirhams, transported via Scandinavian trade routes. This hoard includes 29 silver ingots, several elaborate neck rings, and it all dates to the 9th or early 10th century, reflecting the blending of different cultural and economic influences in Viking Age England. Dr. Kershaw said, quote, "Most of us tend to think of the Vikings primarily as raiders who looted monasteries and other wealthy places in search of wealth. What the analysis of the Bedale hoard shows is that only part of the picture. The Vikings did loot and pillage, and some of the wealth is preserved in the rings and ingots in the hoard. But they also made great profits from long-distance trade routes connecting Northern Europe to the Islamic Caliphate. We can now see that they brought large quantities of this Islamic silver with them when they established settlements in England." I love to think how Bedale, today a quintessentially English market town in North Yorkshire, was in the Viking Age at the heart of a much wider Eurasian Viking economy. The Vikings weren't only extracting wealth from the local population, they were also bringing wealth with them when they raided and settled. This analysis contributes to a growing body of evidence that Viking wealth acquisition was more complex and interconnected than previously believed. While military campaigns and the extraction of a tribute remained important, they were part of a broader economic strategy that included commercial exchange, melting down of imported coins, and recasting silver into standardized ingots and jewellery for circulation within the Scandinavian bullion economy. And the research also underscores how scientific techniques such as geochemical analysis can illuminate the economic foundations of Viking settlement and integration in England. Manda asks if Bedale is still a market town. Great question. My only knowledge of the word Bedale is a very exclusive girls' private school. And I'm not sure if the school is named for the location. But that's when I hear the word Bedales, I think of a very exclusive girls' boarding school, ? So yes, I'm not sure if it's still a market town. That would be interesting. Often, market towns in this country do have occasionally more than a millennia of history, so it would not surprise me at all if it was still a market town. This may be a jump scare, or you might think it's cute. So do with that information what you will. Cute or jump scare? Let me know your thoughts. This archaeologist dug beneath a farm and found a smiling ancient face. I'm going to be for real. Quite cute in the picture, but if I dug into the soil and found that, there may be a time where I lose myself a tad before regaining composure. So this is beneath the 18th century scale farm in Scotland's Orkney archipelago. There is a medieval Viking settlement. And during a dig on the Orkney island of Rousay, a graduate student from the University of the Highlands and Islands Archaeology Institute removed a section of ancient construction to uncover a piece of sandstone. And the stone stared right back, exposing a finely carved head of red sandstone with yellow inclusions, likely quarried from the island of Idé. Quote, "This is such an exciting find. Over the years, excavating at scale and the work, the nearby hall tower, we found several interesting moulded pieces of red sandstone, but nothing like this." It could be more than 900 years old, tied to the Norse settlement that sits below much of the 18th century farm. During a recent dig, crews were excavating a 2-story rectangular building with 3-foot wide walls. Built in a similar style to a square building on the site, that the team believes were contemporary to the late medieval farm. As excavation removed the internal floors, student Katie Joss found the sandstone face. Quote, "We were removing a slab when the head came rolling out at us. As we turned around, we saw a face looking back at us. It was really exciting." I almost certainly would have screamed, and you would never have guessed whether it was fear or excitement. It's thought the carving was supposed to be seen from the front at a slight angle to show the front part of the top of the head, which has beautifully carved locks of hair. The eyes seem to be closed, the facial features with a slight smile with asymmetric eyebrows expressing real character. Now, it does have a broken nose, and they don't know if that's deliberate or accidental. It does match moulded fragments from the nearby St Mary's Old Parish Church, but the team has not found any similarities to the design. The only parallel in size and form was from the nearby Kirkwall St Magnus Cathedral. At the Kirkwall Cathedral, the team located a window, or a frame of window on the south side, featuring a carved face with a curl of hair like this one that's been found here. The cathedral curl is on the left side of the face, while this one has the curl on the right side of the face, almost as if they could be mirror images. We think we're standing on the hall that Sigurd built and lived in, which then became a late medieval farmstead. We think this was a real seat of power in that period. They are going to keep researching the carving, and they're going to compare it to the one found at the St Magnus Cathedral, with the hopes of coming up with an interpretation for its origins. For now, it's an enigma, but more work is going to be done. Steve, that's a great... Maybe this is the location of the workshop for the things that happen in the cathedral. Yeah, maybe. Manda wonders, is it someone put it there on purpose, like when people put plastic skeletons in the walls to scare future builders? Could be. Right. This article also has human remains, which have been edged out by myself. 1,300-year-old human skeletons found in England had grandparents from sub-Saharan Africa, according to DNA studies. 2 people who lived in England during the early Middle Ages had recent sub-Saharan ancestry, likely from a grandparent. The DNA shows there is human as well as material connection that extends to West Africa. They discovered a burial of an adolescent girl at Updown Cemetery in Kent, and the burial of a young man at Worth Matravers Cemetery in Dorset, both of which are in southern England, both dated to the 7th century, so after the fall of the Roman Empire. This is when the Anglo-Saxon peoples occupied the island. DNA analysis of 5 people buried at Updown and 18 at Worth Matravers found that most of these individuals had Northern European or Western British and Irish ancestry. But when they sequenced the DNA of the girl buried in grave 47, they realised that her ancestry came from an entirely different continent. They analysed the young people's mitochondrial DNA, which goes from mother to child. And both had mothers who were likely from Northern Europe, but their autosomal DNA, which comes from chromosomes that do not code for biological sex, showed clear signs of non-European ancestry. Quote, both individuals thus show genetically and geographically mixed descent. Based on a statistical model, the researchers proposed that both people had a grandparent with African ancestry, possibly from similar groups, that left sub-Saharan Africa between the mid-6th and early 7th centuries. The fact that these individuals were buried with their community suggests they were valued by their peers, the authors wrote in the study. Given previous discoveries of diverse individuals dating back to the Roman Empire, including the ivory bangle lady found in York, who may have had North African ancestry, quote, the presence of these individuals at Updown and Worth Matravers in the 7th century Britain isn't terribly surprising. But it's not thought there's a continuity between the Roman period people with African ancestry and the 7th century people found in southern Britain. After the Germanics Vandals sacked Rome, they founded a kingdom in North Africa, but then the Byzantine, etc., whatever, Empire conquered them in 534 CE. At the end of the Roman period, North Africa was conquered by Vandals. It is the reconquest in the middle 6th century AD, which seems to be the significant event here. DNA showing this ancestry is, quote, unexpected but congruent with archaeological and historical evidence. The researchers wrote the study, and it's shedding new light on the early medieval period in Britain. We're jumping to the 14th century. A 14th century fortress has been found hidden under an iconic Ukrainian square. First came the news that researchers at South Ukrainian National Pedagogical University had uncovered evidence of the city's 14th century Genoese fortress known as the Castle of Ginestra. Beginning in the 11th century, the Republic of Genoa grew into a major commercial power through a naval dominance that provided control over key trade routes. The remains of the fortress are found in the square at the top of the Potkimin stairs, famously captured in the silent film Battleship Potemkin in 1925. And we've got here a picture of the remains of the fortress found under the square in Odessa, Ukraine. And also, the section in red is what the researchers in Odessa think they found. So this drawing at the bottom, Potemkin, this bit of the wall is what they think they found. The excavation located the front and side walls of a coastal battery that once connected the castle to the shore. Its position was very close to where the coastal cliff originally stood. That would have given its occupiers a strategic advantage over Odessa's harbour. The most recent efforts to find Hadz-Haleby Castle began in 2021, when researchers used ground-penetrating radar to investigate the area in downtown Odessa. Though the results suggested archaeologists were on the right track, the invasion of the Ukraine has halted these plans until June of this year. So they are starting back up, and we can see they are making excellent finds. So we will check it out as more evidence and updates come in. We're going to hop all the way forward to 122 years ago. A painter has found a message in a bottle in a Cape Bruni lighthouse wall. A painter was scraping rust from a Tasmanian lighthouse, and he found this item that's been in the building's walls since 1903. Historians and conservators are absolutely amazed at the find, thinking it's one of the most significant lighthouse-related discoveries in years. It was found wedged deep in the wall cavity of the historic lantern room during routine conservation work. They thought it was debris at first, and then they realised that it was something quite different. The bottle was sealed with a cork coated in bitumen, which made removing it fairly challenging. You can see there's all sort of crumbs around it. They had to take off the bitumen from the top of the cork, then carefully work their way around the cork to detach it from the glass, as the cork had been dipped in bitumen. Then they've got to get the message out of the bottle as well. It had been folded in a way that made it quite challenging to get it through the neck of the bottle without damaging it. They obviously managed to do so. And they found an envelope containing a letter which was dated to January 29th, 1993, which was written by one J.R. Meach, Inspector of Lighthouses for the Hobart Marine Board. The letter details upgrades made to the lighthouse in that year, including a new staircase, floor, lantern room, and lens system. He noted the costs, described the new flash sequence of the light, and to the delight of researchers, listed everyone who worked on the project. PWS Historic Heritage Manager Anita Waghorn said the letter's condition was remarkable thanks to the airtight seal that protected it from more than a century of wild coastal weather. Quote, you could feel the excitement in the room when the letter came out in one piece. And you can see the detail on the letter. It could have been written yesterday, except the handwriting is a clear sign that it wasn't. The lighthouse was first illuminated in 1838, so it's one of the oldest lighthouses in Australia. It was lit for the final time in 1996, after which it was replaced by a solar-powered night nearby. Was Round the Twist in an Australian lighthouse? I remember that show when I was a kid. People talking about Indiana Jones flashback. But yeah, Message in a Bottle. I'm getting that. But I've just gone straight to Round the Twist. I've got the theme tune playing in my head. That's what's happening for me. I heard Lighthouse. And I was like, that's where I went straight as well. Round the Twist was epic. And also, wasn't there just, I think there was like one series, but it was like the weirdest show ever. It was like Goosebumps. Or Are You Afraid of the Dark? Gosh, I'm dating myself here. Hey, Steerpike Sister, that's it. That's how it. Have you ever felt like this? When strange things happen, are you going round the twist? Oh my gosh. I loved that show. It did definitely give me nightmares. Definitely gave me nightmares. Amanda, you almost certainly saw more than one episode, but the weird thing about Round the Twist is you never know how many episodes there were. And you always think you've only seen one, but then you might watch another one and you're like, no, I've seen this one before. It's like a time lapse. You don't know what's happened. I remember the seagull poop one. That was wild. Right, okay. A 3,400-year-old grasshopper artifact that might have been stolen from King Tutankhamun's tomb has sold at auction for more than $450,000. Just one pause. Wheezy. It's definitely not a British show. Round the Twist is definitely not British, but I can't remember if it's Australian or if it's from New Zealand. I can't remember, but it's definitely not British. Steerpike Sister, I can definitely see why you thought it was a speculum, but those are the wings. Okay, it is Australian. Yes. Fab. So what we have here is not a speculum, it's a grasshopper artifact. There's been a heated debate for weeks over its controversial provenance, but it's now thought that it might have been taken illegally from the tomb of Tutankhamun. It was carved from ivory and wood. It's 3.5 inches long, fashioned and painted around 3,400 years ago. It's got black and blue inlaid eyes that lend it what was referred to as a lifelikeness. And it's got checkerboard painted patterned upper wings that also then point outwards to show off a cavity, which they think probably stored coal or perfume, part of necessary objects for the afterlife. It's suggested that Maurice Naaman, an ancient Egyptian art dealer, purchased the grasshopper from Harold Carter. Naaman then sold the artifact to one Joseph Brummer, a New York art dealer, in 1936. And according to his inventory card, which is now at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the object was, quote, supposed to come from the king of the tomb of King Tutankhamun. In 1948, it's then purchased by Alistair Bradley Martin, who's heir to a Pittsburgh steel fortune. He spent nearly $10,000 on it, which is more than $100,000 today. In 2007, the Merrin Gallery acquired the artifact. At some point after that, the heirs of Sheikh Sazuld Al Thani, a member of the Qatari royal family, then bought the grasshopper for $1.2 million. The rumours of the thefts perpetrated by Carter are becoming unavoidable all during this period. After his death in 1939, artifacts linked to Tutankhamun were found in his belongings. And then in recent years, letters, discoveries, lost treasures have all come to light that provide more evidence of his looting. The auction house claims that the connection to Tutankhamun's tomb is, quote, a recent scholarly hypothesis and not an established fact. They add, quote, there is no excavation photograph of this item in its tomb, and Carter never listed it in the inventory. But he was robbing the inventory blind, so he was robbing them. So why would he list something if he was stealing it? On the 27th of July, regardless, the auction went ahead. In line with UK law, any restitution claim would require proof of illicit origin, illegal export, and timely action, none of which have been presented in its 80 years of public history. Quote, we chose to offer the piece for sale because of its historical and cultural importance. It deserves to be appreciated, and we hope it will enter a public collection where it can be responsibly cared for and accessible to all. Erin Thompson, a scholar of art crimes at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice at the University of New York, says the auction house's smaller size is noteworthy. Larger auction houses like Christie's and Sotheby's, quote, wouldn't touch an antiquity connected so closely with a known pilferer, she told The Times. I wish there was a more feasible solution to historical artifacts selling them to the richest person. Look, agreed. But if institutions can't raise the funds, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is here. I find private collections incredibly icky. Very scientific word there, I'm aware. I find them icky for a number of reasons. I think that sometimes the tax loopholes that can be achieved by loaning an item that you have burrowed millions of your assets into makes it a tax break to avoid being taxed on the wealth you have. That makes me feel unwell. I also think the idea of national and international treasure, the global treasures of the world's history, being held by an individual or a family, and it's only at their discretion that it gets shown, that is icky. I also think it's icky that we have no jurisdiction to ensure that these items are being well cared for. So somebody could purchase something like this and then decide or be unable to care for it properly, leading to the object becoming damaged or even worse, destroyed. Of course, there may well be private collections that are fronting as if they are museums without that oversight as well. I'm thinking of certain museums that are backed by people who are very zealous in their religious faith, who may potentially be purchasing items that offer a challenge to the tenets of that religious faith, perhaps, question mark, with the desire to hide them from public view and thus being part of the conversation, or worst case scenario, to destroy them. So, yes, I have many icks when it comes to this. But I don't know what the answer is, because rich people go to rich people. Yes, I mean, I could, but I forgot it was Hobby Lobby. That's why I was speaking euphemistically, because I'd forgotten the name of it. And what's the museum called that they have? They have a museum, but I can't remember what that's called either. Them. I'm blaming them. So the black bar you're seeing, that's covering human remains, because apparently the tomb of Lancelot has been found beneath an ice cream shop in Poland. Archaeologists were surprised to discover the exceptional tomb of a medieval knight underneath a Polish ice cream shop. It's a 13th century burial that includes a rare carving that is thought to depict the knight himself. It's a large limestone tomb slab that's got a carved image of a knight in full mail armour. This is found in the historic centre of Gdansk, and it was found in July. They were excavating the grounds of a stronghold that was used from the 11th to the 14th century. Within the stronghold, there was a castle, remains of a castle, a church, and a cemetery. The carved tombstone dates to the 13th or early 14th century. It's roughly 59 inches or 150 centimetres long, and it's made, as I said, from limestone. There's a man standing upright in full armour. He's holding a sword and a shield. The archaeoscan team removed the stone and dug deeper, and they found a well-preserved male skeleton, but no grave goods. This person being commemorated seems to be of high social standing, a knight or someone with a military function. This is an important find in Gdansk, and it's a direct link to the city's formative years, offering a rare glimpse into the lives and burials of its elite. There's more work going on with the tomb slab. They are documenting it using high-res 3D scanning in the hopes of being able to reconstruct and preserve the carving. They also want to create a facial reconstruction of the skull to figure out what the knight might have looked like, who they are calling the Gdansk Lancelot. So hopefully we're going to find out what he's going to look like in real life. So they are saying medieval knight Lancelot is importantly in these. So this I think is the name the archaeologists have given him, Lancelot, because it's a very kind of romantic find, rather than inferring that there is a real Lancelot. Shane, you would think that there would be grave goods unless they've been previously stolen. I wonder if we're going to find out more about that too. Or maybe the carving is in place of the grave goods for some reason. Who knows? But I hope we find out. And when we do, I will, of course, update. A, quote, hugely significant Irish archive is going to be donated to the state and unveiled in Cork. A once-lost archive linked to the writer and historian Daniel McCarthy Glass, a descendant of one of the great 13th century Gaelic families of Ireland, is to go on display in Cork, almost 8 years after its donation to the state. This is referred to as a vast trove of hugely significant material, dating from the 1700s and 1800s, and it's going to be unveiled in Cork City and County Archives in Blackpool later this month as part of Heritage Week. The city archivist, Brian McGree, who, along with other artifacts, has spent months listing, arranging, and cataloguing the collection, has said that it will remain on display at other locations around Cork over the next year. It comprises 1,200 items, and it's thought to be of major historical importance. There are letters, manuscripts, photographs, drawings from Daniel and his family members. And so here we've got the portrait is of Daniel, looking very doe-eyed and sweet. Donald, yeah. How long do you think it'll be before the people on TikTok claim he's the real Lancelot? I think it will be already happening. I think it will be happening. Brian, I may have pronounced it wrong. Gaelic? Did I say Gaelic? Gaelic? So we are told the scope of the collection is immense, documenting a range of topics. So you've got the McCarthy lineage, 19th century poetry, historiography, the Irish nationalist movement, the history of early modern Ireland, the French Revolution of 1848, the British Empire in India and South Africa, emigration, the Great Famine, and its dire impact on the local population in West Cork. This is a quote from Mr. McGee. It also includes one document that has been described as, quote, of immense cultural and historical significance, which is the family pedigree of the Prince Jeremiah McCarthy, which was compiled by the famous poet / schoolmaster John Collins of Moy Ross, known as, quote, the last bard of Munster. It's thought to be one of the very few original manuscripts in existence from Collins or any other Gaelic scholar. We're in Ireland, Gaelic scholar. The pedigree has been subject to a detailed process of transcription and interpretation by Cornelius Buttermere, formerly of apparently UCC. So the family has got all of these different connections. So they've got philanthropists, they are connected to Catholic institutions. His father-in-law served in the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. Daniel's close to his daughter-in-law. She keeps all his letters, his writings, his notes, his notebooks. Quote, it's of immense importance to Cork City, Cork County, nationally and internationally. There was a lot of work involved in cataloguing it, and I'm just delighted to see it finally going on display. So, Gaelic or Gaelic? Gaelic is Irish, Jessie says, according to AI. Gaelic is Irish, Gaelic is Scots. So we're talking about Gaelic archive here. Apologies for the confusion. A Michigan museum preserves civil rights artifacts amid federal efforts to downplay Black history. So this is referred to as, quote, brick by brick, beam by beam, and shingle by shingle, a house where the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and others planned marches in support of Black voting rights in the Deep South has been trucked from Alabama to a museum near Detroit. The intricate operation to move and preserve the Jackson home and other artifacts from the civil rights era preceded, quote, President Donald Trump's efforts to eradicate what he calls divisive and race-centered ideologies and to minimize the cultural and historical impact of racism, and Black Americans. This article is referring to it as Trump's purges, and they have sought to remove all reference to diversity, equity, and inclusion from the Fed and the workforce, and many companies have followed suit. The chief executive of the Henry Ford, which is the new location of the Jackson home, insists the museum has no political agenda. Henry Ford's work is focusing on good, factual public history. Martin Luther King Jr. was often at the home of Dr. Sullivan and Richie Jean Jackson in Selma, Alabama, during the pivotal years of the civil rights movement. The building was taken apart and carried more than 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers to be reconstructed in Greenfield Village at Henry Ford. Quote, the fact the Jackson family saved things for this long, even though they may have been out of date or old, they knew the significance of all the things that were in the home, and they saved them and preserved them. This article points out that the Trump administration, second time around, has made it clear that what it considers a woke or anti-white lens will not be tolerated. The president has made moves to remove any reference to divisions over race, gender, or sexuality in national institutions. We're going to talk about the Smithsonian in a minute as well. The US has withdrawn from the UN's cultural agency because, according to the White House, UNESCO, quote, supports woke, divisive cultural and social causes that are totally out of step with the common sense policies that Americans voted for in November. The president issued an executive order titled, quote, Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, and condemned the Smithsonian Institution for what he calls its, quote, widespread effort to rewrite history. Quote, once widely respected as a symbol of American excellence and a global icon of cultural achievement, the Smithsonian Institution has in recent years come under the influence of a divisive, race-centered ideology. This shift has promoted narratives that portray American and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive. Others would challenge this, pointing out that museums are an important part of the culture and heritage, not just in the country, but the globe. And it's important to tell the truth, because people are looking for the truth, to not base it in opinions, not for judgments, but for the truth. So the National Museum of African American History and Culture and the National Museum of American History are holding really iconic items from the civil rights era. So, for example, we talked about this, that lunch counter and stool from Greensboro, North Carolina. Items are on display across the US. I'm really cross. The Director of Conservation at the Mississippi Department of Archives and History said, quote, we can be guardians of these very few fragile remains. We're not going to hide the pain and terror and all the terror and all the awful things that happen. We try to be unbiased and tell every side of the story. Continuing, I've put both of these next to the ding dong for a reason. I didn't want to put it in ding dong because actually it feels too important to minimize. Apparently, the White House is reviewing Smithsonian exhibits to make sure they align with Trump's vision. For some reason, they are conducting an expansive review into the Smithsonian's museum exhibitions, materials, and operations ahead of America's 250th anniversary to ensure they align with President Donald Trump's view of history. Okay. Do you know what? There are no words. There are no words. I'm going to continue, though. This assessment was reported by the Wall Street Journal and confirmed to NBC News. The news of the review was outlined in a letter, and White House Senior Associate Lindsay Halligan Domestic Policy Council Director Vince Haley and White House Officer Management and Budget Director Russ Vought, who cares, signed the letter. Quote, "This initiative aims to ensure alignment with the President's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narrative, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institution. Within 120 days, museums, quote, should begin implementing content corrections where necessary, replacing divisive or ideologically driven language with unifying, historically accurate and constructive depictions across placards, wall diadecs, digital displays, and other public-facing materials." It calls for removing improper ideology from the Smithsonian Museums and the National Zoo. "This is about preserving trust in one of our most cherished institutions," Halligan said in a statement. "The Smithsonian Museums and exhibits should be accurate, patriotic, and enlightening, ensuring that they remain places of learning, wonder, and national pride for generations to come, and a place where no questions could be asked." It is Orwellian. It is Orwellian. Don't be guilty of wrongthink. Don't you dare. Don't ask the wrong questions. The Smithsonian has replied with, quote, that its work is grounded in a deep commitment to scholarly excellence, rigorous research, and the accurate, factual presentation of history. "We are reviewing the letter with this commitment in mind and will still continue to collaborate constructively with the White House, Congress, and our governing board of regents." NBC News reported in May the historical leaders and critics were questioning why exhibits at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture were rotating out. Among those items were Harriet Tubman's Book of Hymns, filled with gospel songs that she's thought to have sung as she led enslaved people to freedom, the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, which is his memoir. The Smithsonian National Museum of American History also recently made headlines after it removed a placard referring to Trump from an impeachment exhibit, sparking concerns over his influence on the cultural institution. Mentioning two of his impeachments, mention of his two impeachments was restored to the exhibit after criticism of the removal. The executive order called for changes in the museum system, charging that, quote, "The Smithsonian Institution has in recent years come under the influence of a divisive race-centered ideology. This shift in values has as it said before, promoted narratives that portray American and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive. We will restore the Smithsonian Institution to its rightful place as a symbol of inspiration and American greatness, igniting the imagination of young minds, honoring the richness of American history, and innovating and instilling pride in the hearts of all Americans." Ideologically, I'm genuinely lost for words about how to approach this or what to say about it. I just think to myself, the vast majority of people must see what's going on globally as well. And I feel so sorry for the teams that are involved with the Smithsonian. I just, as somebody who works in heritage locations, the thought that, and someone who leads education sessions in heritage environments, the thought that there may be government interference in how I communicate that history to young people makes me so furious. It's unbelievable. So much is unbelievable. But I think many people, not just in America, in the United States of America, but the world over, are holding our breath for the midterms. And we're hoping for the best. Let's regroup before I have some kind of embolism. Let's talk about some ding-dongs. This genius. A tourist who lifted up an ancient marble at a Greek temple has been branded, quote, Hercules, by one of the biggest media outlets in the US. The New York Post said the behavior of the shirtless traveler on the island of Naxos has caused outrage. Local Kyriakos Jr. Boulomatisis published the image on Facebook, saying the tourist had crossed the line and to wake up before it's too late. It was taken at the 2,500-year-old Temple of Apollo, also known as Portara. The mayor told the local media a guard would temporarily be placed at the site. It's said that there was no actual damage to the stone, but it is a monument that has been insulted now. Quote, the area is generally not fenced, but there is a signage for the public that they are entering an archaeological site and they therefore must show respect. Comments on the image were universally against the actions of the unnamed visitor, calling his behaviour offensive and sad. Next, a Scottish tourist caught stealing stones from the site of Pompeii. A 51-year-old man carried 5 stone fragments and 1 brick fragment in his backpack when he was intercepted by the Carabinieri. The Pompeii archaeological site said the incident occurred during a guided night tour. One of the activities Pompeii offers to view the archaeological remains in artificial lighting. According to officials, the tour guide saw the man pick up stones from the pavement from one of the ancient city streets near the basilica and put them in his backpack. Security was, unsurprisingly, immediately alerted, and the Carabinieri, that's the police force, were notified. And you can see there's a picture of the pieces. The man was located shortly afterwards, and the artifacts were recovered and returned to the site. The director of the site in Pompeii, Gabriel Zutraigel, said, congratulations and thanks to the attentive tour guide and our excellent custodian, the security staff, and to the Carabinieri for this collaborative effort to protect our heritage. The local commander of the Carabinieri said that controls will be reinforced in the coming days due to the high influx of visitors during the summer. Pompeii is an excavated area of some 44 hectares, and it's the only archaeological site in the world that provides a complete picture of an ancient Roman city. It's one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, with 2.5 million tourists visiting each year. So, don't do that. I know you wouldn't. But if you see a stone on the ground at a really important archaeological site, maybe just leave it there. Maybe we have to go back to looking with our eyes, not with our hands. Or as Steve says, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photographs. It's basic. It's basic. It shouldn't be hard to follow. Basic decency. But that's in short supply, isn't it? On to some events and exhibitions, friends. I'm still trying to calm down from the Smithsonian thing. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't. Honest question. I feel that covering it is important, and I'm happy to do so. However, I also feel that I'm just going to be reciting what has happened as a kind of, here's what's happened this time. Because month after month, when we talk about things in this general vicinity, I am lost for words, and any words that I could muster would be a collection of compound four-letter expletives. It's really no use to man or beast. And I also know that lots of you come here as an escape from it. So if it gets shared with me, I will share it. But if there is enough of you that would rather that I didn't, because it's for whatever reason, frankly, I mean, particularly, you know, Ricky, for those of you that are living with it and dealing with it in real time, I mean, look, our big fear, the thing we always say is that, you know, America sneezes and the world catches a cold. Certainly the UK catches a cold. And I'm looking around at what's happening in my country, and I am then that's it's getting dicey. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm sort of I wonder what the useful thing to do is. Is it to give it the oxygen of attention and thus keep us all aware? Or is it to ignore the tangerine temper tantrum? I don't know what the right thing to do is. So I'm flexible on this, continuing. So there's a part of me that thinks it's very important that we continue, because it needs to be documented, and the cumulative sense of shared outrage is happening in the echo chamber that we all exist in, that we have created. This community that we have created for ourselves is an echo chamber, and people will debate the value of communicating to your echo chamber. But at the same time, I know that there must be a level of comfort in it that everybody seems to be like collectively outraged. And I think that there might be some comfort found in that. So that's where I'm at the moment. And thank you for your kind words about my mental health. But look, I'm not over there. And while I am furious, I can't imagine what it must be like to be in the front row. But yeah, let's hop on to the events and exhibitions. So the British Museum has got some stuff coming up, right? So we know that they're getting the Bayer tapestry. They've also got this exhibition, Ancient India Living Traditions. This is running until the 19th of October 2025. So it's on currently. So we've got a couple of months left of this, and it looks very interesting. Again, if this is a paid exhibition. I have no doubt the Bio Tapestry exhibition will be a paid exhibition. The British Museum puts on excellent exhibitions. The other side of that coin is the British Museum is not engaging in discussions about the repatriation of various things that have been requested. Principal among them, the Parthenon sculptures and the Benin bronzes, others also in the collections. If you go to this exhibition, you are putting money into the institution that is doing those things. Unless, of course, you, for example, have, I don't know, maybe a pass that might get you in or might get you a heavily discounted rate. So I'm going to keep talking about the British Museum exhibitions, but I'm also going to point out that funding it is potentially funding things that may be questionable or not. Up to you to make that decision for yourself. I am very excited about this one when this was sent to me. 2 reasons. Strawberry Hill House. Who's been there? Strawberry Hill House is really cool. So cool. It's this incredible sort of Victorian fairy tale palace, and it's the wildest place. In some ways, I feel like it's the younger sister of the Brighton Pavilion, if that makes sense. And they are having this exhibition that started in November about Henry VIII's lost dagger. So this is something that they think is going from Henry VIII, the Tudor court, through to the Victorian theatre before being lost and then being refound. And I'm assuming that if you go there, you'll also get a chance to have a neb around the house. It's really cool. It's really cool. My very good friends had their wedding reception there, and it was just brilliant. So cool. So I highly recommend, if you are over here or around between November 2025 and February 2026, so only a few months kind of, I really recommend going, checking this out, but also checking the house out as a whole. Shane, I would love to do that. I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna write to them and ask if I can come and see this exhibition and film it and see if I can get permission to do that. That would be super fun. I do see people saying how much they are enjoying the road trips. Trust me, I am really enjoying the road trips. So if there are places that I can feasibly drive to, we're not quite at the kind of, I haven't quite got the budget to get on a plane, but if I can drive there, then if there's places you'd like me to reach out to, I'm very happy to. I'm feeling very brave at reaching out, mostly because the places I've reached out to have all gone, oh yes, please do come on down. So that'll be amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna write to them and ask. A double exhibition to finish with rather. This one's over in the States in Baltimore, and they're both about animals, and they're both at the Walters Art Museum. So we have got running till the 22nd of February 2022. It opened earlier this month. Paws on Parchment. So this is how medieval people thought about and engaged with and admired cats by looking at how these animals appear in manuscripts from the period. Cats did play an important role in the medieval period. They were beloved pets. They were also very important as hunting animals that got rid of rats and other vermin. So here we have an exhibition of cats, including apparently a 15th century keyboard cat. So do check that out if you are in Baltimore. And there's also opening September 2025, going to January 2026, the animal mummies in ancient Egypt. So not the same as cats on manuscripts, but 2 animal-themed things at the Walters Art Museum. So we are told that animals played an important role in ancient Egyptian society, both in life and in the afterlife. And this is talking about animal mummies in ancient Egypt. It's hoping to reveal the stories behind animal mummification. At the exhibition, visitors will uncover the cultural context of animals in ancient Egyptian daily life, to find out why they're mummified, and also to look at the technical process of animal mummification, to see what secrets have been exposed about these mummies through modern medical imaging and more. So that is what I have for you. I'm aware that today's episode has been an up and down affair. There has been a time where I snorted like Muttley, and there's also been a time where I could see a fair few of you were, I think, perhaps worried for my blood pressure, not without cause. So this is I say it in my pre-recorded videos that parts of it is funny, parts of it is serious, parts of it is sometimes fully enraging. But thank you. Oh, Julesy, that's puntacular. That was very satisfying. Well done. That's good. Excellent. We do love a pun. We do love a pun. I think what a lovely note to finish it on. So yeah, Julesy, we laughed, we cried, we screamed. It's Isn't that a life well lived? We laughed, we cried, we screamed into the void. We screamed into the abyss, but we were screaming together into the void. And when you're not alone screaming into the void, you do feel perhaps that there may be some momentum collectively for change, or at the very least, comfort. So thank you for spending this 2.5 hours with me this month, and I look forward to seeing what the news brings next month. Hopefully more laughs, hopefully more cool finds, and maybe a little bit less desecration of historical facts. That is what we can all hope for, I think. And thank you all for taking this time with me, and for your support in the comments, for sending me the articles, just for being here, whether you're watching live or on the playback. And I hope to see lots of you in the premiere's live chat when I put that up on Friday. Lizzie, thank you ever so much for that super chat. And I will be sure to get the little men a treat. Maybe a little ice cream will happen. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope to see lots of you in the premiere chat on Friday, and also next month for our next History News live stream. And I do wish you all the very best. I wish you all peace. I hope that you have unprecedented levels of precedented time. I hope that the next month is a very precedented time for all of us, whether in the news or in our personal lives. May your days be uneventful. So please do like, subscribe, share, comment. Also join the mailing list over on my website, www.katrinamarchant.com. And do take care of yourselves. But for me, as for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Take care. Bye-bye now.